Elune is one of the most intriguing elements of the Warcraft story and an incredibly well-kept secret for 20 years. And she is one of the characters I am interested the most, as well as my friend Arnott. We have a year-old theory covering the first ones, the Void Lords and Elune. You better check them out first to understand the theory we will cover today.
And I will set us all free.
It's Lorfric Kalena, and this week we will talk about none other than Elune herself. She, just like Zoval, was one of the most influential characters in the story of Warcraft, and she is of course a more familiar name since the days of Warcraft 3, but for some time I have had my doubts if she is really a benevolent goddess of life. In my opinion, she is the first one, not the counterpart of the Winter Queen or, you know, according to some, Eonar. No, she is the first one, and I have my reason to believe it. In the upcoming weeks, I may explain why Elune has to be a first one, but for today's theory, I assume you already knew about our theory, Elune actually being a first one, thus being a void goddess. Let's dive in. We will make a brief start with Zovaal first, one of Elune's agents in the physical realm. Zovaal's purpose is to make death the ultimate winner against the other cosmological forces, just like Denatrius stated. Elune's goal is to free herself and the other first ones from the void, but their previous attempts were for naught. For example, Dimensius the All Devourer has been summoned by Ethereals, a race suspiciously similar to the Brokers, right? Dimensius couldn't stay inside the physical realm without consuming everything all around him or it. So, the first ones realized they cannot simply step foot back in our universe in normal ways once they were tainted with the void. So, thanks to Argus, we know the Titan Void Souls can be utilized as a weapon if used as a battery for a certain cosmic power. In Argus's case, it was death and disorder, and Sargeras abused his power to hasten the regeneration process of his Legion army. So, Zoval wants to use the power of Azeroth's Word Soul, the most important Word Soul in the universe, to remake reality in his own image, because in his mind, his first ones couldn't prevent neither his defeat nor their own downfall. And what did Elune do in the meantime? Elune led to the creation of the Emerald Dream itself. The Emerald Dream, born of Azeroth's own dream, was molded by Freya to serve as a blueprint for the Titan's design of Azeroth. But Elune used Freya to create the Emerald Dream in the first place, just like how Yogg-Saron used Loken to corrupt and eliminate the entire defense system of Uldar. Speaking of Yogg-Saron, I will actually talk about the connection between Yogg-Saron, the Drast, Turos, Shadowlands, and the Emerald Nightmare in a later video, but here is a preview. Elune, masking herself as the so-called sister of the Winter Queen from the beginning, led to the creation of the second tier of Elune in the lore, inside the heart of the forest. Remember that the first tier of Elune ended up being corrupted by the Emerald Nightmare and was used by Zeus to corrupt and enslave Ysera, the Green Dragon aspect. Returning to the actual theory, after the creation of the Emerald Dream, Elune sent the wild gods she created into Azeroth, Cenarius, Ursok, Malone, etc. Remember that Elune, according to us, is actually a first one, so she is capable of creating wild gods. And she led the Night Elves to believe that Malone was her equal and Cenarius was their child. So, she planted the seeds of the Night Elven culture. Thus, she indirectly taught druidism to Night Elves, and she also taught them to use an ancient form of soul magic and abuse anima. How? The wisps. This one is actually a whole another theory by itself, but to summarize, the Night Elves have been denying anima from Shadowlands for eons. After the creation of the Well of Eternity, which we will get to it in a second, the Dark Trolls were evolved into Night Elves. Then, interestingly, after learning how to become one with the nature and the forest they live in, thanks to Druidic teachings of Cenarius and Elun, evolved and magically empowered Night Elves also learn to turn their disembodied spirits into wisps upon death, and by doing this, they have managed to keep their souls to remain at the mortal realm and were able to use these souls' powers to help the remaining Night Elves. A very primal method of soul magic, or as we now call it, anima. This practice has kept souls and anima from Shadowlands for thousands of years, since their particular evolution made them take this turn after generations of living by the energies surrounding the Well of Eternity. This way, Elun deprived a tremendous amount of anima from Shadowlands through a form of soul magic. So, Elun set up her plan and everything was going according to plan until Sargeras interferes. Dreaded by the power of the Void Lords, Sargeras turned all his attention into Azeroth's World Soul, which has been surrounded by not a single but five old gods: Yogg-Saron, N'Zoth, Khatun, Y'Sharsh, and Xal'atath. Why five old gods? One single old god was enough to corrupt the World Soul Sargeras saw before, leading him to cleave the entire planet into two. Because Elune decided to manipulate the Titans as well, we know that during Azeroth's past, there exists a Black Empire era for an unknown time. During this reign, at least four of the old gods totally invaded and dominated the surface and possibly below the surface of the planet. And by doing so, they have integrated their tentacles rooted so deep into the World Soul, almost becoming one with her. Due to this massive old god influence upon Azeroth, the Pantheon's attention undoubtedly turned to the planet, seeing this as a first move to cleanse this world from the old god infestation. Amantul literally ripped the strongest old god, Y'Sharsh, from the surface, and by doing so, seriously wounded the nascent world soul of Azeroth, caused her to bleed a sea of her blood at the surface, now we know as the Well of Eternity. The magical powers radiating from the sea of Titan blood eventually led the native race of Azeroth and the races Titans placed upon it to be affected by both the blood of the unborn Titan and also by the blood and remains of the ripped out old god Y'Shash. Then Elune interfered again, this time with Nauru, and with the cosmic power of the light. Now, if you have been somewhat careful, you would know the Nauru turn into void gods when they deplete their light energy. We know this since the Burning Crusade and seeing Muro, the Nauru that got captured by the Blood Elves, turning into Anthropius right before we reach the Sunwell. We have seen several other examples of this happening, and this led to the theory of Nauru being suspected to be the creatures of void hiding in a shell or cocoon of light to infiltrate the physical realm. During our final defense against Legion, we have also learned that Velen suspected the powers of Nauru were resembling the powers of the moon goddess, and also Khadgar himself revealed that Elune may be the creator of the Prime Nauru. So, using both the Nauru and Druidism, Elune started her plan and reached out into Emerald Nightmare thanks to Yogg-Saron. Elune's main goal was to reach the Rift of An, the actual source of the Emerald Dream hidden inside the deepest layers of it. And, to anyone's surprise, after we defeat Zevius, Ysera's image pointed us inside a cave at the very heart of the Emerald Dream, where a remnant of the void in the form of a corrupted flower remained. So, it's almost certain that Zoval will weaken the word soul of Azeroth into a crucial point no matter what happens at the end of the raid. Then, when we return back to Azeroth, we will see that the old gods and the void will begin their main assault to harness the weakened word soul and to open the gateway into the void to bring Elune into our reality. Diving into the rabbit hole even more, Azeroth's word soul, her dream, has been fully manifested as a nightmare twice, has been under the influence of the void for unknown years. At last will be born, but not as a titan, but as the avatar of Elune, the embodiment of the void goddess herself. With the second Black Empire fully unleashed, Azeroth will become the center of the incursion of the void, and throughout 10.0, their main aim will be to bring the other first ones back into our reality. This is where Vrathian and the Dragonflights will come into play. They will try to open the Red Star to bring back Sargeras, Illidan and Titans and call them to save Azeroth, and thanks to the reformed Dragon aspects leading the charge, the main headquarters of our defense will be at the previously hidden and unreachable Dragon Isles. We think the first raid may, be the void infested Stormwind, and during the expansion, Queen Ashera and the fifth old god Zalatat will most likely return to take their place at the side of Elune. And yes, we are also almost sure that Elune will be the main antagonist and eventual end boss of the expansion. Before that final raid, we will face every old god one last time in their own raids and in their true forms and full power. At the end, we will face Elune, who took over control of Azeroth's World Soul as her avatar, and we will try to save our World Soul from this ultimate corruption and set her free. Wow, that was a good ride. I know this theory may sound a bit wild, but we are almost sure the story will come to this sooner or later. the Void War, the return of the old gods and Elune is inevitable. So that was it for this video. Thanks for listening, and our next video will most likely be about 9.2. If you like this video, subscribe, like, and share the video. And until next time, see you.